Okay. All right, guys. All right, guys, we're going to get started. I can get everybody's attention. Include you too, Mike.
We're talking, Mike.
You weren't talking so much, you can hear what we're saying. All right, so we're going to get started. Our presenter tonight is Lynn KJ4ERJ. Sorry, your call sign again?
KJ4ERJ.
Shouldn't know that for all these years.
Echoes.
Lynn and his son Paul is getting ready to come in. Lynn lives in Palm Bay, so we're going to have him go first tonight, so that way he's able to go back to Palm Bay or chooses as soon as he gets done. He's been over in Orlando all day already, working at a client's facility, and he wants to head back home. So we're going to let him go first. The people on Zoom are friends of his from another organization who want to see the presentation. They're actually one's in Massachusetts, the other is in Atlanta and stuff. So that's why they have on Zoom tonight. We weren't sure if Lynn was going to be here in person or if he was actually going to do it by Zoom tonight. So we have the Zoom already set up to go. So we told him to go ahead and invite the ones that wanted to see the presentation. So those are the ones here. After Lynn is done, then we'll go into the rest of what we want to talk about tonight, which is some news that you guys need to hear about. Some of you guys probably have heard about it already, part of it at least. Some of you probably haven't heard everything. So we'll go into that type of stuff afterwards. Then we'll also go do a tornado alert drawing tonight. So somebody will walk out of here with a tornado alert. And during the Lynn's presentation, we'll go around, pass out a ticket to everybody. So that way you have a chance to win, okay? So whenever you're ready, we'll get you started. And then we'll go from there. Please welcome Lynn.
Everything else is over there.
Okay, well, I'm just going to click it up because it's in front of everything. Okay, I can do that as long as this has focus. Oh, let's start the slideshow from the beginning. There we go. Okay. Hi, I'm Lynn KJ4ERJ, KJ4ERJ, and I am the author of APRSIS32. Mouthful of letters, but haven't found a better name for it, and this one's kind of stuck now. What we're going to talk about tonight is kind of an overview, an introduction to APRSIS32 and APRS in general, and again, give an overview of the client, and then talk about some things you can do with APRS and APRSIS32 specifically to help out with events that we support. So how do we get started with APRS? How do we get started with APRSIS32? Using it in events, what I just said, and then I'm also going to touch on one of my other APRS clients for Android. But first, what is APRS? How many people in the room use APRS? Wow, that's awesome. You use it mobile on your phone? How many people use it mobile, RF? Very good. And the rest of you are probably on phone or at home on your PCs. Good. So you pretty much know what APRS is. It's, according to Bob Berdinga, the originator of APRS, it's a tactical real-time information sharing system using standardized protocols. Bob developed this around 1992. Unfortunately, Bob is now a silent key. He passed away earlier this year. So the future of APRS is kind of up in the air. There's a couple of folks trying to pick up the reins from him and bring it into probably a nonprofit organization to keep APRS specifications and forward growth going. It is supported by several major radio manufacturers. We have Kenwood's that were the original APRS radios. Yaesu has some APRS radios. And the newest kid on the block is the Anytone. Anytone now has an APRS radio. It does beaconing, it does messaging. It is similar to the Yaesus, even more closed than the Yaesus. You can't get any data out of this to any external devices, But if you just needed APRS HT mobile, you got one right here, a lot cheaper than the other guys. That's the only reason I brought that, is to show that. And it's useful both for emergency operations and standard day-to-day operations. We all do nets on our repeaters. Why do we do nets on our repeaters? Practice and to make sure they're working. So why does my van beacon over APRS RF every single day, every time I go out on the road? To make sure the infrastructure is still there. When our local digi goes down, the guy that lives up north that does the same thing gives me a call and says, hey, the digi's down again. Any idea what's going on? We used to send messages to Scott Spratt and say, hey, can you get the digi back up? Because it's over to our National Weather Service office. They keep it running most of the time, which is good. APRS is also an example of a highly successful integration of RF and internet technologies. It started off only on the RF, then we bridged it into the APRS IS. I call it the internet side, and that has just taken off big bang. So who am I? KJ4ERJ. There's a KJ4ERJ story out on my APRSIS CE wiki that says the first thing I ever heard of APRS is probably an article I read in the 70s about AX25. I remember some of the things that are related to AX25, but I didn't have money. I wasn't a ham. There was no way I could ever do this stuff. But I remember used bits and digipeater pads and all sorts of stuff, and it had to be an AX25 article. But in 2008, my son, KJ4DXK, back there in the back, came home and said he and two of his friends wanted to get licensed, ham licenses. I said, hey, don't you know you need to have code for that? They said, no, you don't need code anymore. I said, I'm in. So they got licensed, and I think I got licensed 2 months later. And when I found out about APRS, it was a shoo-in for me, because we were heavy into GPS things, geocaching. My son built me a digital speedometer that's still on my 1985 car dashboard, and it just was gorgeous. Then I looked at UI View, and I had a Windows Mobile cell phone at the time, and I'm a programmer professionally. So I sat down and I wrote APRSIS CE on my Windows Mobile phone because I wanted to do tracking while I was out running around town.
Recording in progress.
2008. Then I realized, you know what, I'm building this for CE, which is where APRSIS CE came from. CE underlies Windows Mobile. I could build this for the desktop because I had looked at UI View, which was the Windows APRS client. And I looked at that and said, this looks like a Windows 3.1 program in 2009. I said, I can write something better than that. So I ported my APRSIS CE onto Windows and hooked OpenStreetMaps underneath it to get a map on the screen, and took off. Now, most of you, you're probably aware that UI View will never ever change, because the author in his will requested that the source code for UI View be destroyed. And everyone's like, what a criminal thing to do. These were the days before open source. And the days when they were afraid that this technology was going to be picked up by a commercial entity and make profit off of it. So as a software developer, I'm pretty sure that that's what was going through the guy's mind. He didn't want to saddle anyone else with trying to protect his intellectual property. And he felt it was better to destroy the source than to have it picked up by a commercial entity. So I can actually understand that choice. APRSIS32 is not going to suffer that fate. It'll go open source before it disappears. So it was on Windows and desktop in 2009. And in 2013, I traded in my Windows mobile phone and got an Android phone, and APRSIS MO was built. Can you see a pattern here? APRSIS CE32 MO. I'm still looking for better names. So with that background, we'll actually dive into the real meat of things. And why is my button not moving? There we go. So what do we need to have to get started with APRS? Preaching to the choir here, you already know this. You need a call sign with an SSID. There's some recommendations on what you want to use there, and some paths that you need to use if you're doing RF. Up to a 6-character call sign, which is good, except for some licensees in Australia that are now granted 7-character call signs. Thankfully, so far, the 7-character call sign class in Australia is not allowed to transmit on RF automatically or digital. They're strictly voice. So we haven't run into that problem yet, but APRS is based on AX25, and that 6-character call sign is wired into the protocol. It'll never be 7 characters over AX25. That's a pretty serious restriction. The 2 alphanumeric characters for an SSID, we all know they're numeric when you're on the RF in the range of 0 to 15. On the internet side, any 2-character mnemonic works. But Yaesu radios will not do messaging with a non-0 to 15 SSID. There's nothing in the protocol spec that says that's a restriction. There's nothing in the protocol implementation that ties it to AX25 and makes it not work, but they implemented that restriction. So if you want to talk to Yaesu radios with APRS messaging, pick a 0 to 15 SSID even on your PC. Every concurrent, I can't stress this enough, every concurrently operating thing has to have a unique SSID. There are people that set their TNC and their PC and their other HT and they use the same SSID on all of them. And then they get on the support groups and say, what is this station doing? Why is it ping-ponging between these 2 locations? I said, well, one of them's a Kenwood and the other one's a PC. Like, oh, use unique things. Doesn't matter if it's hardware, software, anything in between, make it unique. SSID recommendations, these are available on the internet. Basically, the suggestions are there, but they are strictly suggestions. There's no constraints or restrictions anywhere in the softwares that make this a restriction. Like -12, KJ4ERJ-12 is my cell phone that's laying over there on the table. But -12 is recommended for these things that you can see on the screen. I just happen to like -12. It's a nice round number. Internet only, if you have PSK63, yes, there's an APRS client that generates PSK63 station APRS packets over HF. They recommended -63 for those because they're not using AX25 over the air. -TT for touch tone, -ID if you're playing with RFID, -A to -Z. You've probably seen these on your maps, right? They're D-star. The D-star repeaters put themselves out with a space in their SSID. If you want to try going beyond 2 characters of an SSID, it'll look like it works, but only a portion of the IS will actually get your packets. Because Job APRS serve, the original APRS IS server, will not relay packets with more than 2 characters after the dash. APRS-C, which is the new upcoming APRS IS server, will forward those packets. So it'll look like it works depending on what IS server you're talking to. I have a bunch of SSIDs. If you go to aprs.fi and do a /KJ4ERJ*, you'll see the list of them. This is just some of them, including things like -E1, -E2. Anyone heard of an ESP8266 chip? It's a little Wi-Fi microcontroller. My 8266 chips speak native APRS. They do telemetry out of my house. AL, TS, you name it, I've got called SSIDs. Yeah, the internet onlys. Hot water. It used to go with the MB for the master bath. Literally, it's the temperature of the hot water in the water lines in my master bath. And it's monitored because we have a recirculation pump on the hot water heater that we can poke a button in the master bath and ask the recirc pump to turn on so that we don't have to wait 2 minutes for the hot water to get to the shower. And when all you have is a hammer, everything looks like a nail, well, easiest way to do telemetry is APRS when you're an APRS author.
It tracks the water going through the pipe so it doesn't get lost.
No, but remember, Bob preaches that APRS is more than location. I like that. Paths and alias, you've all heard of them. It's the service request for digipeaters. If you're a fixed station, pretty much the global recommendation is wide 2-1. Fixed stations don't need a wide 1-1 digipede assistance. They're probably in as good of RF position as what the wide 1-1 digipede here is. If you're mobile in a metropolitan area like here in Orlando or down through Polk County, wide 1-1, wide 2-1 will get you where you need to go. A wide 1-1 here, wide 1-1, 2-1 from here will get you down to Naples. My son-in-law runs an iGate down there and he hears packets out of Orlando with just a 2-hop path. Thanks to Polk County popping them the rest of the way down.
Just for everybody, can you kind of explain what Y2111 does for the purpose of it?
Yes, definitely. And that segues really nice into what Timbuktu is. If you're going to be doing a road trip and you know you're going out to between major metropolitan areas, you might want to crank your path up to a wide 1-1, wide 2-1, wide 2-2. That'll get you 3 hops over the RF, because out in the boondocks, you might need that assistance. So what does wide 1 and wide 2 mean? Best way to describe it is an example. Let's say you're a wide 1 digi, okay? Wide 1 digis typically only respond to a packet that has a wide 1 as the first unused piece. That's typically done by things that aren't real broad in coverage. Wide 2 digipeaters typically have higher altitude. Wide 2 digis will respond to a wide 1, but they'll also respond to a wide 2. So let's say you're a wide 2. So I'm a mobile, I'm driving through here, and I beacon a wide 1-1, wide 2-1 packet. What happens? You digipede it, and you digipede it, right? Because you both heard my wide 1-1 and you acted on it. When you digipede it, you're going to put it out with the wide 1 used. That's what the little asterisk means. You're going to put it out exactly the same way. You're probably within earshot of each other. What does FM have that is unique? Capture effect. Whoever we hear louder is the one that will swamp it. We'll only hear that signal and not the other guy. So what's likely to happen is everyone here and those folks over there are going to hear your digipede. These two are going to hear his digipede. You might not hear anything. Do you know why? Because you're going to hear his signal at a certain level. You're going to hear his at probably about the same level. They're going to cancel each other out. You're not going to be able to make sense out of it. So that's what happens on the first hop. But now I'm over here and I've got my little HT and I'm only doing 2.5 watts and I beacon a wide 1-1, wide 2-1. What's going to happen now? You're going to digipede it with the wide 1 used. You're not even going to hear it. You're going to hear his digipede. What are you going to do? You're going to digipede it again with the wide 2 used. So that way, all those folks over there heard it. You guys even heard his probably. Everyone here heard it. And then I forgot to do this. You're also a wide 2 digipeater, okay? In the back of the room for those at home watching. So you didn't hear his probably because he's too far away. He's only a wide 1. He's got coverage to these guys. He's the wide 2. You heard his digipede, but it shows wide 2 is used because he decremented the 1 to 0. So you heard it and you didn't do anything with it. Already used the whole way up because I decremented the 2-1 to a 2-0, which is used. But now I'm this guy coming through with the in Timbuktu. I'm doing the wide 1-1, wide 2-1, and I hit this guy. Same thing happens. You digipede it, mark the wide 1 used. You hear his digipede. You rebroadcast it as a wide 2-1 because you took my wide 2-2 and decremented 1. You heard a wide 1 used, a wide 2-1. You act on it. You'll digipede the wide 2 used. All of a sudden, the guys out in the parking lot heard that one, and they didn't hear yours. So now, put these nice digipeaters. The wide 1 digipeater is probably in someone's house. 40-foot antenna, modest power. The wide 2 digis, they're up 80 to 100 to 300 feet above average terrain. Put that out in Colorado. And put those digipeaters, those wide 2 digipeaters up on the mountains. And you can beacon from an HT walking in downtown Denver and be heard in Oklahoma City. We're exploiting that in an event that's actually coming up this Saturday called the Appalachian Trail Golden Packet event. We're deploying 15 HOP7 digipeaters crisscrossing across the Appalachian Trail from Springer Mountain in Georgia to Mount Katahdin in Maine. We've done this for 8 years or so now. And we have actually passed packets from Springer to Maine and from Maine to Springer. We do it with a HOP77, HOP77 path. And we do it not on the national frequency, needless to say. So when this goes on, packet starts at Springer, it gets digipeated and decremented the whole way up into central Pennsylvania. And then HOP7 is used, and we got the other HOP77 to keep going to Mount Katahdin. And yes, we have a ham that every single year has hiked to the top of Mount Katahdin. He starts out before dawn, hikes to the top, works the digipeating from up there, and has to usually bail out around 1 or 2 in the afternoon to be back down off the mountain before it gets dark. And he packs his entire APRS station with him. So that's happening this Saturday. And I get to play shack potato. Because I'm in Florida, and needless to say, Atlanta can't reach Florida without probably another 7 or 8 hops, because we don't have mountaintops that we're going. They're doing 100 to 120 mile links between the digipeaters up there. And it's awesome to watch it actually work. So good question about the hops. Anyone have any question about hops and paths and why you really don't want to run a wide 2-2?
Where you can have one.
Yes.
I did that from here to Texas.
And what path did you use to digipeat through the ISS? But it was RS0.
Yeah.
RS0 ISS.
Yeah.
Put that in your path and the ISS will digipeat you. There's ducting that happens on our 2 meters. My iGate over on the east coast of Florida has directly copied digipeaters on the coast of North Carolina. It just shoots out over the water and comes through, but that's probably about once every 2 or 3 months. But it's open usually for about an hour that happens. You may find things on the internet talking about relay and wide. Relay and wide are obsolete because their big problem was digipeaters couldn't tell they have already digipeated it. And you would get packets going between 2 digipeaters back and forth, depending on what people were beaconing. So that's why we did away with that. Relay and wide by themselves are obsolete. How many people have heard of the state coverage, the SSN-N? We're used to the wide NN, right? There's actually a statewide coverage that a lot of digipeaters actually support. I don't know if yours does or not. That instead of wide, you put the state ID, like FL 2-2. The feature of the statewide alias is only digipeaters within that state are supposed to act on it. So against the north border of Florida, the Georgia digipeaters will hear it, but they won't digipeat it because they only do GA-NNs and Florida does FL-NNs. Yeah, I believe it is. So goldenpacket.net, if you want to go read about the AT Golden Packet, atgoldenpacket.net, you can read about the event this Saturday. You can also in your path, instead of a wide 1-1 or a wide 2-1 or a HOP77, you can put a digipeater's call sign and SSID in your path. And only that digipeater will act on it. So if you are at a fixed station, for instance, and you've got a wide 2-1 digipeater, a wide 2 digipeater that's 5 miles away, and a wide digipeater that's 10 miles away, and another one's 15 miles away, and they can all hear your station, you might actually want to just tell it to use that closest digipeater. And that way, you don't have to worry about the packet fratricide and the capture effect, because all 3 of those digipeaters are going to simultaneously do your packet. where if you only go through that one, you get the coverage around your local station that you're after without lighting up those further away. So you can actually put a specific call sign SSID of the digipeater in your path. So enough about paths unless anyone has any questions about those. APRSIS32. I authored it when I decided UIView looked like it was very, very old. It's not an installer that you download. You go to aprsisce.wikidot.com/downloads, and it downloads APRSIS32.zip. If you ever get told somebody's downloading my program and it's asking for a password and they don't know what the password is, they're not downloading my program. They're downloading something else. And they need to go back there and make sure they're downloading APRSIS32.zip. And then it's not an installer. You just unzip the thing into an empty directory. Those of you that have installed it know how easy it is. But the most popular thing that people do wrong right out of the box is they double click on the downloaded zip and then they double click the APRSIS32 inside the zip. And you get a little blue line across the screen that just goes back and forth because running under the zip, it actually unzips it into a temporary directory where it can't run right. So you got to unzip it to an empty directory and double click it over there. That's the only thing people do wrong. And don't unzip it inside one of the Windows protected directories like program files, because APRSIS32 does not adhere to Microsoft development standards. It writes to the folder that the executable is in. And you're not allowed to do that according to Microsoft. And in Windows 7 and beyond, I believe, they don't let programs do that. And it won't work right. So when you first bring it up, you're going to get this little client configuration dialog. All you need to put in for the first part is your call sign and your SSID. If you decide to use a -0, you just put your call sign in there. You poke accept, and you will get a world map. And you'll stare at that world map and say, what do I do here? You zoom in, you pan it around, you get the crosshairs to line up on where your station is, you keep zooming in until you're rock solid on your station, go up in the upper left-hand corner and click transmit. It will ask you if you want to move me to center. And you say yes. And boom, your station moves to the center of the screen, beacons it to the APRSIS, which promptly ignores you. We'll get back to that. But your station, me, is now going to be in the center of your screen. You can zoom back out. You will start seeing stations populated around your screen to a radius of about 50 miles. And you look at that configuration dialog and it says range 500. And you say, why did he say 50 miles? I wasn't the programmer when I started this that I am now. And it was a whole lot easier to just make it 1/10 of a mile. So that is actually in 1/10 of a mile increments. So you have to multiply the range that you want by 10 and put it in the range. But that's all it takes to do this. And I said the APRSIS is going to promptly ignore you when you hit your transmit the first time because you didn't put a passcode in. Passcode is just a number. It's not something you get to choose. It is algebraically calculated from your call sign, so it will never change. For your base call sign, it doesn't matter what your SSID is. And you get one of these things by following the instructions at APRS, by sending an email to passcode@homeside.to. Because the APRSIS developers said that the passcode is computed passcode for your call sign, -1 is used for receive only. That's why it ignored you, because that's the default when you install the client. It is the responsibility of each software author to provide proper passcode to their individual users on a request basis. Why is that the case? This is to aid in keeping APRSIS restricted to amateur radio use only. Why does that matter? Because, say again?
You don't want someone to get hold of that, should have it. Well, if someone or an out-hand gets it and plays that, you kind of mess up the system.
Guess what? I can put your license in jeopardy if you're running an iGate from the APRSIS. Say what? Who's responsible for what his radio transmits? The operator, the owner of the iGate, is responsible for whatever his iGate transmits. If you are a transmit capable APRSIS iGate then any station that you've recently heard nearby, if you get passed from the APRSIS a message addressed to one of those stations, your iGate will transmit it on RF. If I'm on the APRSIS and I look and see Paul's call sign right near the iGate sitting here in town, and I send him a message with stuff you're not supposed to transmit over the air, who's responsible for that vulgar language that just got transmitted? The iGate operator. So every now and again, a brand new APRSIS software author will come by and he will code into his program that all you have to give me is your call sign, and I will calculate the passcode for you. And people are making up call signs that are vulgar, are not licensed to them. You can literally generate an APRSIS passcode for FUBAR, and it will duly be your call sign on the APRSIS. And when that happens, the existing software authors get on their case and say, no, you are responsible for generating passcodes for your users. You have to look and make reasonably sure that they are actually a licensed ham before you give them a passcode, which is why if you email your name and call sign to passcode@homeside.to, which is me, I have a group of people that can validate that the name that you gave me and the call sign that you gave me is licensed. We'll generate a passcode for your call sign and send it back to you. Yes. Yes, absolutely. It's based on your call sign. You do not need to get a new one for my client. It's the same number.
What happens when you get a vanity?
Whoever had the vanity before you might still be using it. Yeah, that's fine. If it's your call sign, yeah, it is strictly computed from the call sign.
Right.
It doesn't matter who you are, what client you're using it on.
How'd you find it?
Huh?
How did you find it?
I have a website that I can put in any call sign.
Please do not propagate the use of web-based passcode generators as they don't validate anything. Yes, they exist. Yes, they're trivial to find. I'm not going to say how to find them, but they are trivial to find. Please don't propagate their use. We really want people to ask the software author, so at least they've been vetted that the name they provided matches the call sign that they provided, and we give them a passcode. No records are kept, nothing is on file, which is why existing passcodes never go invalid, because they're never actually registered. They're just calculated and given out. And they're the same for your passcode until you change your call sign. You don't need a passcode for doing APRS over RF. It is strictly an APRSIS construction. Okay, here I am. I'm going rambling on, and we're not going to get through all this again. Configure general. This is where you get to put things like the range. There's advanced filters that you can put in to look at more things. Personally, I run about a 300-mile range on my APRS clients. APRSIS32 is unique in the fact that it can handle an entire global feed of the APRSIS. And it will show you the stations across the entire planet if you have a reasonably powered PC. To do that, you either give it a range that's positively huge, or you just tell the APRSIS server that you want the full feed, and you will see packets everywhere. Until
You won't see the world, it'll just be blue.
yeah, it's just black if you have the labels turned on and cranked up. Until the Ukrainian war started, there was actually a cyber attack against the APRSIS, and some hackers, they believe in Poland, were generating random APRS stations at random locations and totally saturated Russia with bogus APRS stations. And it took APRS.FI down. Everyone knows what APRS.FI is? The website that lets you see what's going on the IS. Because the traffic like went up tenfold over what it's supposed to be. And he's just like, well, until he put filters on it. So that's the configure general dialog. APRS symbols, you can choose your symbol. A lot of people think the symbols go out as little tiny bitmaps over the air. No, it's a 2-character lookup table, and those are the only symbols that you get to choose from.
You can add from that.
Who
Pardon me?
creates symbols?
And no other symbols can be created?
There are some new ones that most APRS clients don't show. And what they're doing is they're taking the overlay character and mapping different overlays on a single base symbol and putting different definitions under it. And it hasn't really gained traction because I think you asked who made the symbols. This is the original symbol set. Actually, it's the revised symbol set, but I wasn't involved when the original one was there. The left hand is the primary table. The right hand is the alternate table. And in the alternate table, you can put overlays on things, which is 0 through 9, A through Z. Very handy for putting rest stop symbols on. The easiest way to find the symbols is you go to the search for revised APRS symbol set, or just APRS symbols, and look for the one that mentions WA8LMF. He's a ham that does all sorts of things with UI view. He's the major UI view supporter now that the author is dead. And he actually has these two tables, but he also has the table above it that says what character corresponds to which cell in these tables. So it's easier to tell that, I don't know which one's what. A $sign is a telephone.
I have a quick question then. Unless I'm missing it, there's no field day symbol.
Not that I'm aware of. A lot of people use the tent.
That's what we did too, but I was trying to find something that was actually field day related, more field day related.
No, you're right. I don't know of a field day one. Not even in the new extended symbols. FD will get you an F overlay on one of these symbols on the right-hand side. I don't remember where A is in this list, but it's going to be an F overlay on one of these guys. Probably not what you're after. RF ports, I'm going to skip right over RF ports in the interest of getting down to using events. But yes, APRSIS32 supports RF ports. KISS is the easiest one to do. It will do receive only on FTM 350s, FTM 400s. It'll do Bluetooth interfaces to Kenwood D74s. It'll support KPC 3 pluses. The only thing you need to remember is that KISS, the port type of KISS, is specifically designed for Kenwood APRS radios. If you have another KISS TNC, don't make it a KISS type port, make it a simply KISS port. Again, it's software authors that start writing software before they know everything that's going to be possible. And I didn't know about other kinds of KISS TNCs when I put the KISS port in. I only knew about Kenwoods. So simply KISS is for everyone else. KISS is strictly for Kenwoods. Failure to do that will take your KISS TNC out of KISS mode when you close the program. Probably not what you had in mind. You can find out if your RF port's working because on the left-hand side of your screen, all the packets will start to have asterisks on them. That means they came over the RF port. APRSIS32 can digipeat. There's a document on the web, aprsis32.wiki.com/doc:/digipeating. And it tells you how to do this by editing the XML file that is the configuration for APRSIS32. And you can get really, really carried away with digipeating. The example here is for a wide 1.1, wide 2 digi. And we'll talk UI trace, UI flood is a whole different story. And KPC 3s have a feature of inserting the ID or not. That's also an option in digipeating, whether you want to be a low-level digipeater or a high-altitude regional digipeater, which is whether you only do wide 1 or whether you do wide 1 and wide 2. And if you want to shut down all the people that are abusing the paths, that would be your digipeater configuration in APRSIS32. It basically says, I don't care what I heard, I am going to mark it all used. Because there are people out there that are beaconing wide 7.7 packets. And they're lighting up digipeaters through 3 or 4 states when they beacon. Yes, there are. That'll digipede anything they hear. There's actually a station down in Miami that likes to transmit a wide 1.1, wide 2.2, wide 1.1. Nothing in the spec says that's not good. But what does that do with our digipeater environment? We got our wide 1.1 here, right? I'm standing here and I digipede that packet. Wide 1.1 hears it. Wide 2.1 hears it. Wide 2.2 hears it. he retransmit with an unused wide 1.1. He didn't hear you. You're too far away from him. This little wide 1 digipeater heard it, and he beaconed it back over this little local area. And he's only supposed to be handling packets that are close to him. He's a wide 1.1 fill-in. It's hopping out of Miami the whole way up to Palm Bay and then lighting up Melbourne for no reason. No way to stop him. He has to want to fix it. Took me a while to figure out why in the world my digipeater was digipeating Miami packets. Have I mentioned multi-tracks? This is one of what I consider one of the major features of APRSIS32. You are not limited to a single window. How many people have not heard of multi-tracks that have heard of APRSIS32? You just click on a station and say multi-track. Boom! You get another nice little window like this one here. You do another one, you do another one. You can have 15 of these going if you have a big enough screen. So it's really nice if you're trying to watch one station while you're watching everyone else.
We use it, like you said, at night tours, or usually following Tella and Charlie. We can always tell where they are just in a window by itself.
You can watch your family driving around town. Some of the uses for APRS. I knew my wife was uptown. I wasn't sure where she was. I ended up uptown. I checked on my map. Hey, she was right over there. It's lunchtime. I sent her an APRS message to say, hey, you want to get together for lunch? She replied back, sure. Where? I said, back mall. And we saw each other converge on the mall. It was fantastic. You can even see people make wrong turns or miss exits when they're cruising up to Dayton.
It's number one. You're off course.
What's really bad is when you're out in Oklahoma City and you're on your way to the client site, and the client knew you were a ham and he happened to be watching APRS.fi and watched me drive right past the facility I was supposed to turn into. I went like a mile down the road, turned around, came back. I walked in, he said, you missed it, didn't you? Yeah, I did. So now we're going to dive into event usage, unless there's any questions about the APRSIS32 client in general. APRS event usage, one of the first things we're going to talk about is streaks. Streaks is something that was unique to APRSIS32. And I still haven't talked to Jesus about this, but I'm going to mention it anyway. It is no longer going to be a unique feature, and eventually it's going to come and get much better. You can put your course maps, which is what's shown here in the little screen capture. You can load up GPX files, and they'll become overlays on your map so you can see where the routes are, and you can see when your SAGs are driving off the routes. You can put your rest stops as objects. For the situational awareness, I understand I've never supported an event before that doesn't use APRS, but a lot of the voice traffic was, where are you, who's close to here, who's close to there. Supporting these guys at the bike events here in Orlando, you never hear someone ask, where are you, unless the call is, you haven't beaconed for the past half an hour, where are you? They already know where you are. They put direct calls to the person that's closest to where they need somebody and tell them where to go. They throw an object up on their APRS screen if they know the operator actually has a full-up map in their vehicle. And the guy in the vehicle can drive straight to the object. He knows where he's going. It's awesome. So that gives you the situational awareness and the objects on the map to communicate where locations are. So what is a shriek? You've all run APRS clients. You know that when you look at that map, there's a ton of stuff on there. There are stations all over the map. People are driving all over the place. You're at an event, you don't want to see all that trash. You want to see your SAGs, your support people. What shrieks let you do is in the APRS comment, you just put exclamation point, some predetermined string of characters, exclamation point. Called an exclamation point is a shriek in computer programming. So that's a shriek. You just pick it. We suggest that you don't use 3 characters, although we tend to here for some reason, because there's a thing called a DAO, which gets you extended precision in the APRS packets. They luckily start with a capital W or a lowercase w. So if you use 3 characters, don't start it with a W. But officially, I try to recommend people don't use 3 characters. And don't use a shriek SN shriek That's where I got the idea. SN is actually the spotter net. It's a bunch of weather spotters that also tied into APRS long before I came along. And they were saying, put a streak SN streak in your comment. The spotter network will pick it up and put it on their map. I said, wait, if they're doing that for their map, I can build that into APRSIS32 and give you a view menu option to only see the stations that have a certain streak in their comment. And that's why in APRSIS32, you can do view streaks. There's a list of the ones that it has seen. You can check the one you want to see. Everyone will disappear except the people beaconing that streak. So you can see your SAGs, your people, your objects, and everyone else disappears off your map. This is also why in APRSIS32, there's a view all and a view none. You wonder what's the difference between none and just turning all off. View none will clear all of your other options after confirming it with you. View all will turn on everything, but keep your selections intact. And then you just toggle the view all back off and you go back to your selections. So you're in the event one of your SAGs isn't showing up on your map. You don't do a view all, you'll see them. You go give him a nickname that includes the shriek, and then you can just turn all back off and you'll go back to seeing only the event stations.
You can actually put it in a nickname then and it will show.
Yes, that's actually the last thing here. You can provide the shriek locally via the nicknames. So if you have an operator that's running an APRS station and he doesn't know how to change his comment, or he doesn't have the right things to interface to his TNC to change his comment, right? You click on him, say configure nickname, and in the comment right here, in the comment field, you put your shriek. You don't even have to check the comment. Even a disabled comment will pick up the shriek for your local filtering. So that's correct. Specifically designed that way that a nickname commented shriek will be used no matter what.
There, even people that have used this program since day one almost just learned something new.
And if you have people that are running their own normal call sign SSID and you want to call them SAG5, you can give them a nickname that says SAG5. You check the box that says label, and on your map, they will show up as SAG5 instead of call sign -SSID.
The biggest time we use that is everybody on the phone because they can't change their call sign to something else other than their call sign because they won't go through IS.
Because software authors are lazy. And my call is my call, and that's the one I'm going to use to talk to the IS and my packets. One of these days, I'll change that in mind. Recommend you put your shrieks in your objects. We're going to talk about the objects you want to set up for events here in a minute, but definitely put that in your object comments as well. Course maps are just GPX overlays. Most events have their routes available as GPX files. Many of those GPX files are positively huge. They have thousands, if not tens of thousands of points in them. You don't really want to try to display that. But you can if you want. If you have a fast enough computer, it'll actually put all those little points in your GPX map. But most of the time, you only want to show the turns. But to put these in, you do a configure, do a configure overlays, add GPX files. That's the menu to get there. You want to put your longest route in first, because the order in which you add them is the order in which they're drawn on the screen. So you put the wide ones in first, the really long ones, then you put the next shortest in a little bit narrower. Some good contrasting colors. If you've got 3 routes, put coral with a 12 width, put crimson with an 8 width, and put dark blue with a 4 width. Makes a good layering visibility. If you have 5, you can do crimson, dark green, red, dark cyan, dark blue. Nothing magic about these colors. I just played with them and found ones that make good contrasts in the layering. And you do all that in this nice little dialog that comes up when you add the GPX file. You get to pick the color and you get to pick the width. You can even choose what percentage of opacity it is. You know what opacity is? The opposite of transparency. I think in both So it's how much is it going to cover up your map and how much is it going to let the map show through. But the important points there was wide to narrow and the order in which you add them. But like I said, a lot of the GPX files you get have thousands of points. One of the things I do for the events is run it through a GPX simplifier. You can get the one I play with at tinyurl/GPX simplify. And it comes up, website kind of looks like this. You upload a GPX file to it. It's got this little slider down here at the bottom. You slide it back and forth and watch the map on your screen change its look. And when you're happy with it, you download it back as a new GPX file with a lot fewer points. You want to target about 150 to 200 nodes. That's a performance sweet spot for APRSIS32. The issue is display performance versus the accuracy of the GPX. Longer routes, you might need a few more points. Shorter routes, you might need a few less, but 150 to 200 is a sweet spot. To do this, you want to zoom in the simplifier to the tightest, most confusing part of a route. And I'm going to show you what that means here shortly. You just drag this little slider back and forth until it looks good. What that is this is the 2017 Tour de Cure, 101-mile route. This is Lake Nona here, I believe. Comes down around past the lake down here and went the whole way out to Holopah. And it started out looking like that. It was 3,730 nodes in that GPX file. I shrunk it down to 200 nodes. Can you see any difference in those two maps? They look pretty much the same, don't they? Well, there's 148 and 100 nodes. That looks a little problematic here. You look down here, you see this little red bump? That's where the road went, but the purple line is where the GPX says. And down here, this is really, really bad. You have to look really close to see it, but the red lines are really off of the purple lines. So 100 nodes isn't enough to show the detail. You crank it back the other way and you zoom in and you can get the picture that, okay, over here, my blue line is not anywhere near sticking to that little loop. So you crank it up a little bit, it's getting closer to 128 nodes, 152 nodes, 170 nodes, and 194 nodes, 208 nodes. Yeah, we're finally getting it to stick a little bit closer to the red thing. So zoom in a little bit more and see what we're really doing. And we really can't tell what we're doing in this loop. So you keep. And finally at 386 nodes, you can actually see what you're supposed to do in this little convoluted piece. And that's what it takes to simplify the GPXs that they publish. Their original 3,700 point GPX file had you right on those roads. But did you really need all those points everywhere else? Probably not. So highly recommend doing the simplification, and that gets you this. Is that a question, Megan? Oh, dramatically. It shrinks the file size dramatically to remove the points out of it. The 10 and 25-mile routes, you shrink them all. The 10-mile route was 807 points. It went down to 114 points. 25 miles was 1,700. It went down to 200. Only because it had the same stupid little convoluted neighborhood to drive through.
Thank God we don't use that neighborhood no more.
Yes. Other examples. Here's some sample GPX overlays, what they would look like on your map. The left one, the left two was actually a ride for Ronald in some year. And the 2017 Tour de Cure on the right-hand side, but what's missing on that right-hand side map? Numbers. What are the numbers? Rest stops. We don't have our objects on the right-hand side. So that's the next thing. We want to put the objects in for the rest stops. For those of us that are using APRS to support this, we will then see immediately where the rest stops are, and we don't have to be studying a piece of paper if we happen to have an APRS mapping client running in our mobile, be it on our phone or coming off of our radio. To make an object in APRSIS32 is trivially easy. You center on the location where you want it, you zoom in really tight to make sure you're in exactly the right place with those crosshairs, and you can either do configure objects create, that's going to put the object right at the crosshairs on your map, or you can right mouse button anywhere in what's visible, and down at the bottom of the right mouse button pop-up menu is the coordinates that you clicked on, and you can say create object here. That'll bring up the little object creation dialog, and just fill in whether you want it on the IS or RF, how frequently you want to beacon, what its name is, put your shriek in the comments so that you can filter these objects later. And I really, really encourage the event coordinators to put these objects out. Put the objects out early, a week or two in advance, as soon as you know where they're going to be. It doesn't hurt. And that way, those of us that are coming from out of town, we can look at our APRS map a week or a day before the event, get a general feel of the lay of the land for the areas that we don't normally drive around in.
Can I
Put the
ask a
objects out
question?
early.
Me. Here. Michael, have you been building these? You've been building these? You've been building them. This is a class in itself.
Oh, it is.
Obviously, you did a lot of tutoring on this. Since they're the examples.
Yes.
I'm impressed, but this is a class in itself, just to use this.
Yeah. If you go to aprs.fi/GP-**, you will see where the golden packet stations are going to be on Saturday. You think, wait, how's he getting all those objects out on RF? They're not on RF. They're on the internet side. They're coming off of my machine in Melbourne. But all the guys that are staffing, that's the easiest way for them to tell me exactly where they're going to be setting up. I put the object on the map, they go to APRS.fi, they zoom in, they put the satellite view up, and they say, no, it's a little bit further to the west. See where that little building is? I'm just to the east of that building. I zoom my map in, I move the object over there and say, what's it look like now? They say, perfect, that's exactly where I'm planning on setting up. Great way to communicate exactly where things are, is objects.
Got a real quick question about objects. Field day. We put the field day one up for this year at Central Winds Park in Winter Springs. I did it on your program at the house, but you were seeing it
It was like no, I said the wrong thing. It was like
like Nona, but yet it was still beaconing correctly at the house.
Did you make sure that your object ID was unique?
Yeah, because it said field day. It was something field day 2020 or 2022.
No, you only have 9 characters for the object ID.
I don't remember what I used now, but it fit.
Right. But the one you saw at Lake Nona,
Yeah.
did it have his comment on it? It did? There's a couple of reasons that can happen. The most popular is 2 people are beaconing the same object ID with 2 different locations.
Okay.
And usually they have 2 different comments on them. That's real popular with repeater objects. The other thing that can happen, there are some eye gates. There's one particular one between here and Tampa that is running what's called pass-all. AX25 has a checksum at the end of it. You can tell KPC3 TNCs to do pass-all. If pass-all is on, they don't care if the checksum matched or not, they will pass the packet into the eye gate. And unfortunately, the most popular pieces of a packet that gets munged up, if it mungs up the ID, it's easy. It doesn't look like the same object anymore. If it mungs up the coordinates, boom, your object moves. And then it'll come back on the next beacon. But APRS-FI has a speed limit.
I put my sailboat in the lake.
It's about 100 miles an hour, I think. I'm not sure the exact number. But if a station is moving faster than that, APRS.FI will ignore all those positions, which is why my ISS object that is orbiting the APRS, showing you where the ISS is, won't show up at APRS.FI. It moves too fast. It's moving at orbital speed. You can see it, but you won't see it at APRS.FI. So that's the couple of reasons that will happen. The other most popular part of a packet that gets corrupted by pass-all is the 3-bit code for MIC-E packets that specifies their status. And way too many times, all 3 bits get turned on, which means emergency. And all the APRSIS32 clients out there in the world that happen to hear that packet, which is everybody that's drawing on a full feed, we'll get a pop-up from the station, a message from APRSIS32 saying, this guy's calling emergency. And you ignore it because nobody ever calls real emergencies. Really?
Yes.
Well, I actually count on that.
I read up on it.
I totally believe it. I actually count on that sometimes because if I ever get a speeding ticket, most of the time I drive at the speed limit. And I figured if I ever get a speed limit, I'll get a tip. Then the policeman comes up and asks me how fast, how do you know how fast you were going? Yes, I absolutely do. And if you want to look it up, it's on the website.
That'll throw them off.
Yeah.
You can't stop you because you're the slowest person.
I know, that's why I got pulled over, but I was driving the speed limit. If I'm driving beyond the speed limit and he actually manages to get me pulled over out of the thousands of other people that are going the same speed I am or faster, I'll take my ticket. He's not going to need to prove it in court. I know how fast I was going. It's right there on my dashboard. Yeah, but then he has to catch me or wait for me. How many enforcement officers are hams and know about APRS? That's one of the other things about APRS. I mean, you have the general population, right? You have ham radio operators. You have ham radios that know about APRS. You have ham radios that use APRS. How many of those are police officers that actually have time while they're on duty to watch APRS.FI for speeders in their area? Yeah.
Have you seen it flying on APRS?
No.
Well,
It tracks.
well, no,
I'll have to look for it.
not the sheriff's department helicopter, but there's a deputy
Deputy that flies.
flies it, and he has this, sometimes a APRS on his phone.
He has
Oh, it's
Phone,
All of a sudden, we're watching this thing go across APRS.
a phone.
Oh, it's a
Right. I mean, really going fast.
Very good. So,
Oh, yeah.
I'm sure he's in a helicopter. So situational awareness is put the view streaks in there, filter it out to yours. You may need the nicknames to pick up some of your guys that didn't actually put it in there. Multi-tracks actually have a feature called always on top. And when I was doing these slides, I had to remind myself where that is because I couldn't find it. You right click on a multi-track or the main window, and one of the options at the top of the menu is always on top. It does just what it says it does. It will put that window on top, and no matter what you try to do, it stays on top. So if you have a multi-track that you really want to keep track of, you just put that one on top, and you can do anything else, and you're not going to cover that guy up. Yes.
Quick question. Just looking at it, just reminded me, what is that red and green bar that goes up the right side of the screen?
That's a really, really good question. There's two red and green bars that go up the right-hand side of the screen.
Okay.
Have you ever clicked on them?
No.
Oh, man, click on them.
I should, okay.
You might have to double click on them. And I'm going to ask the guy that's sitting down here running one, can you double click on the right-hand side of the left one of the pair? Close stations. Okay, we'll talk about close stations. Go ahead and close that. And then double click on the right-hand one. Power status. So you may only have one. Okay, some people will have two, some people will only have one. The one on the right-hand edge is the power status. If APRSIS32 detects from Windows that your device is battery capable, it will ask Windows what's your battery level, and it will show it to you right there on the green bar. And APRSIS32 loves to do a color change that goes from red through yellowish orange and over to green. And it's a continuous color spectrum. It was real hard to figure that code out, actually. So green means your battery's full, and it'll go down and it'll change through to yellow and orange and finally go red when it gets to the bottom. Close stations dates back to when I first started this. Computers were not very powerful and memory was not very huge. And APRSIS32 restricted itself on how much memory it would consume for stations. And you could configure the maximum number of stations you wanted it to keep track of, in addition to how long you wanted to keep track of them. If it got too many stations in too short of a time, it would start purging them out even if they weren't old enough. And that inner red-green bar would go up, and if it's getting up and turning red at the top, it's filling up how many it has. But now, memory is cheap and easy and free and lots of it. So if it gets to the top, it just makes the list bigger. And that's why you'll see a brand new install will go up and turn red and boom, and go up and turn red, boom, go up and turn red, boom. And finally, it remembers what max it ever saw, and it'll come up next time with that max, and it'll be way down here at the bottom and just slowly grow up. So yeah, anytime you see something in APRSI32 that you're not sure what it is, click it, double click it, right click it. It probably will tell you what's up. Yes, sir. You have no bars on the right-hand side? You got to have one.
It's the user, don't worry.
That means you're not seeing the right edge of your screen. Yeah, you weren't seeing your whole screen.
I told you it was the user, don't worry.
I thought it was the number of users.
What left bar? What left bar? Oh, that bar. Huh? Hit the plus. Hit the plus, keep hitting the plus. Now hit the minus. It's your zoom level. Yeah, you can do plus or minus on the arrow, but it shows you what zoom level you're at. So the question was the colored bar on the left-hand side of the screen, just to the right of the packet scroller, which is covered up in these views. This little guy here, he actually shows up on multi-tracks too. That's actually the zoom indicator. If it goes up in red, you're zoomed really in tight. If you go down and turns green, you're really zoomed out.
About halfway.
Yeah, up and down arrows do that for you. Or you can click the pluses and minuses. I think pluses and minuses themselves actually work. Okay, you haven't asked what the other color bar is that I find much more interesting. If I can find a screenshot that actually has it in here. I have too many multi-tracks.
Can you send these slides to Rick?
They're already on the APRSI32 wiki. Okay, well, anyway, up here in this upper left-hand corner, where it usually says APRSIS OK and has some indication about when the next beacon is going to go out, below that are some little tiny skinny colored bars. You got one? Sometimes there's two. If you have a radio interface, there's two, I believe. It's how long it is before the next beacon is going to go out. It's the beacon pressure. So it starts off at the left-hand side and gets bigger and gets closer to red and keeps turning more and more red until it gets to the right-hand edge, beacons, and starts over.
Based on your timing, so.
Yeah, if you're on a timer. Now, if you're mobile with a GPS, that can be a really interesting thing to watch because it's actually the transmit pressure, because APRSIS32 will choose a lot of different reasons to transmit. Timer, when you're fixed, it'll do smart genius beaconing, which has like 3 or 4 different parameters that govern when it's going to beacon.
Now it's got two, declining down,
Ah.
and then a second one screen.
Right, the declining one is the minimum time between beacons. So when it beacons, that'll jump out to the right-hand edge and then start going down. I think it's like 10 seconds by default. And it will not beacon no matter what you try to do, almost, until that timer gets down to 0. I say no matter almost. If you click the transmit menu option and that top bar is there, it will say, beaconing too soon. Do you really want to do this? And you can say yes, and you can sit there and wrap the transmit and totally flood the airways if you're on RF. But it tries to prevent you from hurting yourself. So all these things are little. You can even double click and right click and all sorts of things, that top left pane, and get lots of debug information about the program. Location communications, mobiles are going to move on their own. They're awesome. They have GPSs, whether they be phones, RF, you name it, they move on their own. So you don't have to keep track of them in an event. You can create your objects, like I said, you right click, take the coordinates menu and say create an object here, or you can create an object at the screen center. When you're in an event, we don't put names out. You put bib numbers or event numbers or some code that you're using to communicate that that's what's going on over there. You pick your beacon frequency here in the little object configuration dialog. You pick your beaconing interval in minutes. You tell it whether you want it to go out via the internet or RF. You can put your path in. It defaults to the same path that your beacon is configured to go out, but you definitely need to put your object ID. Up to 9 characters, free form. Try to pick something unique. Don't put forest or cloud. Put Florida cloud. And you can change the object in APRSIS32 to change an object symbol. I mean, you click on the symbol and it brings up the symbol selection dialog. For most objects and events, you probably just leave it at X. It makes sense. It's easy to do. Yes, and X marks the spot. Everyone knows that.
It's not in, it's outside the park.
And don't forget to put your shriek in the comment. The comment is free-form text. Remember to put your shriek in there so it shows up in your views. Now, when your incident is over, you can kill the object. You just click on the object, either normal click or right click, and one of the options is kill object. APRSIS32 is nice. You tell it's click my object kill, and APRSIS32 will automatically start beaconing at your interval the kill command for these objects for some number of retries, and then it'll actually make the object disappear on your screen as well. Not every APRS client honors object kills. APRS.FI in particular never kills objects. It doesn't matter who asks the object to go away. They're just going to sit there until they time out with however long your view is set to look for APRS things. Kill station, it will actually...
That's for net control.
It removes the station from your display until the next time it beacons. So it's just a handy way to get something out of the way if you're trying to do a screenshot for a presentation.
Right. At the bike, right. At the bike event, when your APRS never works and we show you it 4 hours ago, we just kill you off so we're not confused to where you're at.
That's actually what it's for. Like if one of your guys is going off and he's turned off his APRS and he's going home, you just kill the station. He disappears from your map until he's out of the range. Unless he beacons again, in which case he will come right back. There is no blacklisting in APRSIS32. That is one thing I absolutely refuse to do. Not the only thing I've refused to implement so far. Distance estimates, real popular thing I get asked. How do you measure distance? I want a little ruler in APRSIS32 so I know how far away something is. Oh, come on. The lower left corner of your screen is showing you the radius of the circle in miles or kilometers if you're choosing to look at things in metric. So you center your screen on one thing, you play with the zoom and the size of the window until your other thing is on the circle and you know exactly how far away it is. You don't need to make a whole new function just to put 2 points on a map when you've already got a circle and a distance. I don't know why people have such trouble with that. Click, click.
Well, it is, and it's just a click, click, it tells you in miles how far it is.
But how many different clicks are already in APRSIS32, and how many people want to know how far away something is? You're right. There are other products that let you measure distances, and they're not trying to do most of the things that this thing does, which is why I tell them, look, here's how you measure distances. You don't need a ruler. I don't need other things cluttering up your display. You can actually, if you center on like bib and then you click on RS 3/3/4, rest stop 3 and 4, right? It actually comes in here and says from center is 5.97 miles west-northwest. So it tells you in the pop-up if you want to know exactly. The circle said it was 5.94, close enough. I had an instructor in college said close enough for government work. Did that cover everything there? Yeah. So if you're missing a station on the map or how to label your SAGs, this is what you just learned. He probably didn't configure his shriek. So you do the view all, click on the station, configure nickname, fill in his label, put streak yours in the unchecked comment, and uncheck view all, and you should keep him on your screen because you gave him the streak that you wanted him to have to begin with. When your event is over, make sure you set all your objects to kill. I'm guilty of this. The Golden Packet event is over. 3 months later, I get an email from someone in the middle of the United States. They say, what is this GP-MDMTNS that's sitting 3 miles away from my station? Like, okay, I forgot to kill my GP objects. Go GP kill. And that, incidentally, is what in the object creation dialog, there's this thing called a group. You can actually group your objects and they'll become their own little cascade menu. So you can have your GP objects and your geocache objects and this objects and that objects, and you can very easily manage the groups, like kill all the GPs. You have to individually go into each one of your GPX overlays and take them off the map. There is now, compliments of Gil, a screen labels nicknames delete all. And in parentheses, it'll tell you how many nicknames it's going to kill, because that is really important to do before your next event, because APRSIS32 will still let you create duplicate nicknames. And it will drive you crazy in what information it's showing you and what it's not showing you and why they're showing up here and not showing up there. It took me probably 10 minutes sitting in Gil's vehicle one day trying to figure out why in the world his APRSIS32 was acting so bizarre. He had 2 nicknames on the same station. So that's when delete all nicknames is there, so Gil can just go delete all of his nicknames and be happy.
That helps with net control also.
Yeah.
Yes.
You nickname a whole bunch of people.
Yeah, a lot easier to just delete all. So that's all I had prepared for events. Anyone have any questions on that? I know we're like an hour and a half into things.
If you have questions, if you could use the microphone that's in front, that way everybody can hear you. I know you're not scared of microphones.
I appreciate all the questions you asked in the middle. I really like that. Interactivity is what I thrive on, in case you didn't notice. No questions?
And I ask one that's not. I just installed the program a few days ago. And apparently my K9Z or Z is the only one that's gotten around it. But why are D-Star stations showing up twice?
Because the D-Star station is putting themselves in as 2 different IDs. They are literally beaconing 2 IDs. If you look at them close, one of them is a space letter. Do you have one on your screen right now?
Hold on.
The down arrow works too. Up and down arrows will zoom.
I saw John. John was doubled. You what again?
Down arrow is a zoom out. It's easier to use.
Okay, here's John.
Yeah, click on him. It's actually beaconing as a space B and a dash B.
Yeah, I did notice that.
And
Okay.
D-Star does that with its objects.
I can probably get
Coming
through
from
it.
a source and they can't control it. The
Mike is
D-Star
not.
authors.
Mike, apparently, is it a hotspot? Yeah, his hotspot has
Hotspots don't.
only got one
That's
spot.
that's a real D-Star repeater, I suspect.
No, they're hotspots.
Those are hotspots?
I didn't even realize they were doing this because I realized my hotspot at home is giving me 2 IDs and I didn't even know it was doing that.
You take it up with the hotspot authors.
And then I looked at the D-Star repeater and it's doing it. And then I look at him and he's not.
Okay.
So
Yeah. You take it up with the hotspot authors because
I hate people that know what they're doing with no explanation.
beachfront property in Kansas. How do you search for specific call sign? Trivially easy. Screen find, screen follow find. Is that what the menu option is? Screen follow find, type in your call sign. If you're not sure what the whole thing is, put an asterisk at the end. It'll populate your drop down with only that
Screen
thing unless it
follow.
found one. You can also get there with Control F for find, Control F. Probably the most frequently used shortcut I have. I have a few more slides. Nope, it's, if your station has copied that call sign, it'll be there.
Does it have to be exact?
Yes, unless you put an asterisk at the end. If it's on the APRSIS and it's within your range and the APRSIS server is feeding you those packets, it'll be findable there. And it's beaconed since you brought up the client.
Found 3 stations.
Which-
Find them.
That drop down will show you what those 3 are. Once you filter it that way.
I went there last time.
And then you can either go to the thing in that window or you can pop a multi-track up on what it found.
Did you say control point?
Control F.
Control point, yeah, okay.
How about clearing overlays, old overlays?
You bring up the overlay and
Yeah,
you disable it first. And then you bring up the overlay and delete it.
Oh, okay, because there's 4 of them showing up, even though I've cleared them, deleted them.
Okay. I'm not sure what she was asking what multi-track does in that find.
It brings up a multi-track window on the guy you found.
What's a multi-track window?
It's one of those 15 windows that you can have cluttering up your screen all over the place.
They just follow one person.
So that's the main window.
Yeah.
Click on one of those stations. Go to the Cascade menu and say multi-track. That's a multi-track window. Do a view none on the multi-track.
Just
Now you're
no.
watching that guy, make him a little bit smaller. Size the window smaller. Yeah, make that window smaller. Without using the X. Okay, right click in that window. Tell this always on top. Always on top. And I'll just tuck that window wherever you want it to be. And that will keep him, it'll follow him around while you do other things on your PC, and that window will always be on top. You can have 15 of those if your monitor is big enough. Ah, do you mind closing this right now temporarily? Hit the X on the main window.
This window?
No, the main window. That's how you close it. What did it ask you?
Save active multi-tracks.
And what are your options?
Yes, always. Show me, no.
Yes is going to save them for your next restart. Always is going to save them. And even if you don't open them the next time, they'll still want to be there. Always. Show me is for all those things you didn't put on top and you minimized them and you're not sure what in the world that station was and why was I multi-tracking it. You can hit show me and it'll bring it up and show you where it is. And no, we'll just forget all those things when you close.
Every time I engage over here, I have a file on my Yeah.
If I'm my thumbs work, my phone will run off.
Is there a way to look in there? I just throw it. Because when I click on it, it's like a.
Notification from your bottom, John.
I have a little red dot right on the apartment.
And screenshot it and send it to the APRSIS
I told him what he
CE groups.io group.
Remember that one time and he was like, you know, talking.
Oh, my God.
I do some things. The 64-bit API is actually not compatible with the 32-bit API, and for some of the calls that I do. No, I want to do that one of these days.
One thing Rick just brought up that he showed me, his question was, how do you get rid of GPX files? One thing to remember, do not delete the GPX file before you remove it from APRSIS32. If you do delete it, they will always be listed there, but you cannot select them. That's what he did.
You can edit you can close your APRSIS32, You can edit your APRSIS32.xml file, search for the name of the GPX, and very carefully delete exactly that little XML block.
We'll never be able to do that.
But APRSIS32 protects you from making XML screw-ups in editing this because it keeps a safe copy of the last one that loaded cleanly. So if you edit one and screw it up and it can't load that one, it'll go back to the safe and your GPX file will still be there. Grayed out forever until you go edit the XML file. Or put a GPX file back where it's expecting it. Doesn't even have to be the same one. It just has to be the same name. And then you can go delete it.
GPX file, rename each time.
The XML file, yeah. So yes, there is a support group on groups.io. For those of you that are familiar with groups.io, it's called APRSIS32. Feel free to join that group. There's a whole bunch of people on the planet that use this program, as you can imagine. Last time I looked, there was like 500 concurrent users. I'm still nowhere near the number of UI view instances that are out there. You wonder, how in the world does he know that? There is a view menu option called View Platforms. And it counts all the things that are on the different things that it's identifiable as to what they're running. So you can, if you pull in a planetary full feed, you can find out how many Kenwood D710s are out there, how many FTM 400s, how many FTM 350s were active in the amount of time you've been watching the program run.
People actually still.
There are still over 1,000 active UI view users across the planet out of about 24 to 30,000 APRS users. Yeah, if my program lasts that long, I will be thrilled. I've authored other APRS clients. We know about APRS ISCE, which was Windows Mobile. Yes, there is still one Windows Mobile user over in Europe that's still using that original one. I can't believe it. APRS IS32 on Windows, APRS ISMO. Where did the MO come from? It's in a development environment called MOI for Android. But the reason I picked MOI for Android development is it's cross-platform. APRS ISMO works on Windows. APRS ISMO works on Linux. APRS ISMO will theoretically work on Apple if I can find an Apple developer willing to build it for me. Never tested that piece yet. And I mentioned the ESP8266s, which are running Node MCU on these little Wi-Fi microcontrollers, because when all you have is a hammer, everything looks like a nail. I have APRS. I use APRS for all sorts of things. I had an APRS messaging capability with an ESP8266 with a relay wired to the reset on my server in my house. I could send a specially crafted APRS message to that station with a single-use password, and it would toggle that relay to reboot my server. Because my server, I swear, had a Lynn proximity sensor on it. It knew when I was more than 50 miles away because it never failed when I was in the office. It would wait until I'm in Panama, and then it would go south. So I built that. Someone I know actually has a ESP8266 running APRS wired to his garage door opener. You can literally send the right crafted APRS message with a time-based password, which you're not very likely to get because you can't even replay it, and you can make his garage door open and close. It's not mine. You can probably guess whose it is.
I know.
So I have APZ TED, I have APZ Lua, I have APZ Mo. Well, actually, I don't have APZ Mo. He does. Does it still run APRS? It does. That is literally his remote control lawnmower. And we extended the precision capabilities of APRS so that we could actually see his lawnmower do circles on his driveway over APRS. Usually APRS has 2 decimal digits of minutes. The DAO spec increases that to 3 or 4, and our extension does it to 6 decimals on the minutes. It was fun. APRS ISMO, I was actually requested to mention this. This is my Android client. It's written, like I said, in MOI that can run on all those platforms. It's a scripting language, is what MOI is, and you can download it from that URL, tinyurl.com/get-APRSISMO. Waiting for someone to take the picture before I change the screen. It looks like this. Oh, okay. So it looks like this, looks like that on the screen on the left-hand side. Not yet. You got an Android environment, it will, actually. The only thing that is not intuitively obvious to the most casual observer, which is IOMCO, is when you bring the thing up, you stare at that screen and say, how do I get any options? You tap that title bar, this thing where your call sign is and these randomly strange numbers. You tap that title bar and all these buttons will appear as overlays on top of your map. And that's how you can get to config, which is the upper left corner. And that brings up the config, which is something you're more used to. You tap on one of the sections and it expands and you can pick them and change your options and everything. Just like you would expect, it's got a station ID, which is your call sign SSID. What do we need to make sure that SSID is? Starts with a U, unique. Yes, if you put this on your phone, don't name it the same thing as your PC. But yes, you can use the same passcode because the passcode is only based on the call sign, not the SSID. You can pick your symbol, you can pick your comment, you can pick your APRSIS server. There's all sorts of things you can pick. You can enable all sorts of things and play with it and get totally lost. The symbol selection in APRSISMO, I'm actually particularly proud of. The first time you bring it up, be warned it takes a while to come up because it's out there generating all these stupid little symbols in your Android environment so it can show them to you on the screen. But at least you can browse them by category and just click on the one that you want. Messaging, APRSISMO does messaging, not quite as nice as APRSIS32 does, but when you bring up the buttons, there will be, back on the buttons screen, there will be this QSOs button in the upper right-hand corner. That's how you get to the messaging pieces of APRSISMO. Or if somebody sends you a message, it will show up on your screen and be green to say, you've got a message you haven't read yet. You tap on that, it'll bring up the active QSOs, announcement servers, which we're not going to get into. And in the future, there's actually going to let you save your QSOs so you don't run into what I do, and that's I'm halfway through a conversation with somebody, and for some reason I need to restart my client, and I've totally lost track of the chat that I was having with him. But one of these days, that's going to go in there. When you tap on one of the QSOs, it brings up this. You want to send a message to somebody, you hit compose, and then you can type in your message and poke send, and it does its thing. APRSISMO does do RF, but only if you have a KISS-capable Bluetooth TNC. That can be a mobile link, that can be a Kenwood D74, that can be a KPC3 Plus in KISS mode with a Bluetooth serial port adapter on it. But as long as you have a Bluetooth accessible KISS TNC, you can configure it in APRSISMO. That's a what? Does it have a TNC in it?
It does, but
it doesn't have a KISS TNC. That's why the qualification. APRSISMO will do iGating. But there is a gotcha in the Bluetooth support of APRSISMO. It does not like beaconing over RF while you're mobile with the app in the background. I haven't figured out what the bug is yet, but it will just randomly disappear some random time after you turn on Bluetooth beaconing, so it defaults to the Bluetooth not being turned on. That's actually configured here in the Bluetooth section of the configuration. And to remind myself what it says in there, I'm going to the config and going to Bluetooth. And in there, you get to choose whether the Bluetooth is enabled or not, whether it's iGating, and that defaults to true, whether it transmits posits or transmits messages, as in a messaging, bidirectional messaging iGate. Transmit posits defaults to false on the Bluetooth because it likes to crash. But if you want to beacon over RF, keep the app in the foreground and don't ever bring up any other app while you're moving, and it works perfectly fine. Go figure. Which means it's really, really hard to debug. You ever figure out how people debug APRS software that they have to be mobile to make problems happen? Yeah. I used to take my wife out for drives. You drive. So here's a naming challenge for you. APRS ISMO is what it's called right now. Actually, right now it's called test host because I made a snafu in my Android development environment and I lost the developer certificate to APRS ISMO, which is why it's called test host, because you can't install a new version without the same developer certificate, but that's a whole other thing. I've considered calling it APRSI's DRWNLXIO, depending on what platform you're running it on, but that's a little bit too much. So I played with links, links-a, links-ac, links-ac, APRS links. I kind of like the links. He's kind of a cute cat, isn't he? He's got a really cute cat. And the Hydra, I mean, that's what his icon is right now. He's a Hydra. My wife hates the snakes.
What was the snake hat?
I agree with that.
It's actually a mid 1500s, I think, sculpture thing.
It first looked like Medusa.
It did.
And I like that.
But he's upside down now in test host on your Android desktop. He's actually upside down to make sure I keep track of the fact that I need to fix this one day. So if you have any neat ideas for what to call it, it's probably going to end up APRS ISMO because it's in the same family. But that's the naming challenge. So that's all I had. I'm partial to 8 characters. Oh, just call it -2. It took me a long time to figure out. Have you heard of direwolf? Direwolf actually is a mnemonic. It's digital information radio exchange something. It's got a really cool acronym. That's all I had, unless you all have more questions. I'll go on as long as you want me to talk.
Yeah, Lynn. On the platform view, I did a few things, but how do you get it back to where everything's back on screen again? You have to wait for it to repopulate.
View none, view none, do view none.
I did that.
And it will say, I'm going to turn all these things off.
Mine is grayed out right now.
View none, it's right at the top.
Right, mine is grayed out right now.
No, it's not. You're not looking at view none. You're looking at view platforms none. Oh, view none. And say, you want to click, oh wait, you want to keep all.
Yeah.
Okay, so no to that. And just say view all.
Oh, okay.
That's why I have all versus none.
Gotcha.
None is going to turn off all your filters.
Gotcha.
And all is going to put everything there and keep your filters intact. It's awesome for balloon tracking, high altitude balloon tracking that we don't get a lot of in Florida, but it's fun to watch with that. But anything else? Because I actually have as many slides as I've gone through. There's that many more slides lurking after this one. Okay. Any other questions? Otherwise, I'll turn the floor back over to your illustrious leaders. Look for the stack of KJ4ERJ.
Recording stopped.